Anyway, tonight we're really delighted that Fern Hames, who is indeed the director of the Arthur Rylah Institute of Environmental Research, which does wonderful research, and Fern may well tell us about some of it. I personally, I know it well because of my role as Deputy Vice Chancellor at the University of Melbourne, responsible for research for many years. Her title of the talk, which is interesting, it's Leadership Lessons from Penguins. And as you will have read on the blurb, and I won't go through it all, but Fern had the opportunity. I'm really very jealous. I've always wanted to go to the Antarctica and never achieved it, even though I was in Tasmania and at the university at one stage and did a lot of work with the Antarctic Division, but I could never fiddle to get down there. But Fern has had this wonderful experience, and as a consequences of that, she tells me she's learned a great deal about leadership. But beyond that, she's a wonderful scientist in her own right, and has a passionate commitment to the environment, and no doubt you'll see that some of that comes through. So, without much further ado, may I invite you to make a presentation from Leadership Lessons from Penguins, and we do have some people coming in on Zoom as well, and we hope that will work as well. Oh yes, the other thing I prompted, we were going to take a photograph of the group and the activities. Has anybody got an objection to their photograph being taken at all? So I'm told I have to ask that these days. So yes, Claire, it's all fine. So Fern, over to you, and thank you once again for coming. We're really delighted that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Hello, everyone. And yeah, I'd also like to acknowledge Elaine's role in this. You know, I've known Elaine for a long time, and I really value her friendship, and I'm really grateful to her for inviting me to speak here today, and I send her best wishes as well. I don't know if she's joining us on Zoom, but hello, Elaine. Wonderful to have you join us, and yeah, best wishes, and I hope we can have a cup of tea together soon. So thanks to Elaine, and thanks to you for inviting me here today. I do have a rather long and complicated title of my talk. It's not just about leadership lessons from penguins. I'm also going to tell you something about the woman who changed the world. Before I do that, of course, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land where we're meeting this evening, the Tamarong people. I'd like to pay my respects.
I'll list that to you rather than repeat it.
Absolutely, we don't need to repeat it 16 times, so well, maybe we do, but I would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present, their emerging leaders, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who might be with us today. I'd also like to acknowledge country itself and nature as an elder and mentor for me that has driven much of my life and really important in my life. So I am going to talk to you, it's kind of like a AAA talk tonight. I'm going to talk to you about ARI. I am going to tell you a little bit about the amazing Arthur Rylah Institute that I'm incredibly proud of and the work that we do, but just a little bit of it, just a snippet, because I could talk about that for hours and you probably would find that boring in the end. And then I am going to tell you something about being in Antarctica and the leadership lessons that indeed I've learned from penguins, which you might think is a bit weird, but it makes it more fun than just looking at pictures of Antarctica. And then because of the nature of the climate change interest that all of you have and the general environmental interest that you have, I'm going to talk about action. You know, what can we do to make a difference in the world? So they're the things that I'm going to sort of run through. I'll start with ARI. ARI is short for the Arthur Rylah Institute for Environmental Research. It's part of DELWP, based in Heidelberg. I've come up from Heidelberg today, but I actually live in Alex, so I got to Alex most weekends. And we are a leading centre for applied ecological research. What's applied ecological research? It's research that makes a difference. It's science that matters. And we've been doing research at ARI since 1970, when the Queen came and opened ARI in Heidelberg. We have lots of pictures of her with hats and gloves and dead possums and things. And the whole family there was there, the whole royal entourage, they were all there with hats and all that stuff. So that was a really important year for those sorts of things around the world, really. because Rachel Carson had published Silent Spring and led to this, emergence of understanding about what was happening with chemicals in the environment and this awakening of understanding of the need to better protect the environment. So that's when ARI was born. And we were first based in the Fisheries and Game Department. So there was a big focus on things that people could hunt or catch, but that's dramatically changed over the years. And we're a very different organisation now, but we're still a fabulous organisation. Now, I've been here before talking with some of you. Some of you might, I can see a couple of nods, maybe you remember me, maybe some of you weren't, but I used to have a role as the Victorian Native Fish Strategy Coordinator. And I used to do quite a lot of work here in the wetlands and with various other people, Kath Olive and a whole bunch of different people. And I've spoken with you about one of my passions, which is how do we look after our native fish, particularly in this part of the world? And I guess to try and summarise some of the things that we've talked about in that context are the things that fish need. And fish need trees. Some people go, huh? I thought fish lived in water. Well, sure, fish need water. But most of all, fish need trees. And I've just been for a wander in the wetlands just now. I'm so thrilled to see all those new little plants growing there and doing really well and contributing to the great environment in the wetlands. Fish need trees because they provide shade, like so important in a hotter, drying climate. We need shade to cool that water down. They fall in the water and they create snags. And the snags create places where fish can breed inside. They create diversity of habitat in the river because you get a scouring out, you get quiet areas, you get fast areas, you get a velocity refuge for fish. They can rest in behind a snag. Snags are incredibly important and they form the basis of the food chain because you get that slimy kind of microinvertebrate thing happening and then you get bugs, then you get bigger bugs. It's a food chain. So snags are really important for fish. They also drop leaves into the river and that's a constant nutrient stream and it's also a food source for other bugs that other fish eat. And they also provide fire mitigation because often if you've got really good vegetation beside a creek or a river, you'll get a moisture gradient there. It's cooler, it's moister. So if a fire comes down, it'll often, be mitigated by that moisture gradient. So trees are really important for fish. And I guess if I was going to have one message from tonight, it's like, do what Bev does, plant trees, plant trees as many as you can. The other thing, of course, that fish need is water. They need the right kind of water and they need the right amount of water. And it depends on when, because fish use different cues to move in a water system. They'll use a different flow of water and even a different smell of water to trigger them to move upstream, downstream, to find food, to go and breed, to move around. They migrate a lot. And it's really important how we manage water for fish. So if you have a property and you've got a pump in the water, please think of the fish when you're pumping the water out. The other thing that fish need is us. We are part of nature. We're not separate from nature. We are nature. And fish need us to advocate for the things that they need, plant those trees, look after that water, to fish responsibly, and do all those other things that fish need. One of the contexts in which I've spoken to you about fish before here has been things like the Macquarie perch, which were really impacted by the 2009 fires. And we did a lot of work on King Parrot Creek and, it's been marvellous to see them come back and start to recruit little baby maccas down there as well. So they're doing well, which is great news. But what about ARI more broadly? Like we do a whole lot of more things than just fish. And my responsibilities now go right across the Institute. So this is our vision. Our vision is that our science underpins high quality, evidence-based decision-making by governments and communities. So we provide the information for people to make good decisions. We explore plants, animals, all kinds of systems, and this thing called SECS, which is socio-ecological cultural systems. So we're not just looking at ecology, we're looking at how society interacts with all of those systems as well. We create a lot of decision support tools so people can plug things in and get answers out about what they maybe should be doing. We work in all kinds of different environments. We get local people involved in citizen science in the things that we do. Looking at whales, taking photos of whales is an important part of helping us understand how whales move around the coast. We do videos to help people bring otoliths from fish to us that we can use to age fish and understand where they've been moving up and down rivers. We study water birds. We've got some amazing staff who have written the books on birds in Australia and the books on mammals in Australia. We've got incredible legendary knowledge that we draw on every day. Fabulous people. We look at threatened species a lot. We look at their populations, their habitat, and how we can help them recover when they're impacted by different things. We use a lot of survey techniques. Some of them are really standard things that you might know about, like tracking fish or using camera traps out in the field, or just doing quadrats and looking at all the plants inside. I'm not sure if this is, oh no, it's not. I'll just go back. Some of you would know Dave and Laurie. This is in King Parrot Creek, helping us put nets to identify the larvae that were in that river after the 2009 fires. Incredible contribution from Dave and Laurie over many years. I really miss them. Another thing that we do is innovate in our techniques. So some of those techniques, people have been doing them for years, everywhere, all over the world. But this one I love. Those are bats coming out of a cave, about 4,000 of them. Microbats, like they're only this big, right? Imagine trying to count 4,000 bats coming out of a cave in like a minute. It's really difficult. So this is actually missile tracking software. So I just love that we're putting it to a really good purpose. So those sorts of things are great to, you know, innovate and change how we can use different technologies in different ways. This boat is the only boat in the world which can do electrofishing in saline and estuarine waters. Electrofishing is very common in freshwater. It's done a lot in the States, it's done throughout Europe, but this is the only one in the world in which we can survey estuarine and marine waters. So we're pretty proud of that. We use drones a lot. They're really good for mapping all sorts of different things. And we're also using innovative techniques to share our stories, like 3D video imagery to help connect people with the science that we do and the places that we go. So we're really keen on innovating and moving. We're really keen on, oh, I just realized that you're missing all of the headings because of this thing. How do I get rid of that banner up the top? Who's the tech person's gone? Not that one.
It's not on.
It's not on there?
Not on.
What is this? Imagine there's a heading that says citizen science. So we call citizen science democratizing science, because, you know, scientists go and do science, but we want everyone to be involved in science and have a part in it. So we do a lot of citizen science programs where people can, as I mentioned before, they can get otoliths, which is the ear bone out of fish, and we can identify lots of things about fish's history from otoliths. We do the whale stuff, we do frog work, we do water birds work, we do lots of things in which people in the community can get involved in that, including in a post-fire context. Here we go. Again, you're missing the heading, but the heading, yeah, I think I tried that. Hide video panel. Hide floating leading controls. That's the one. Totally right. Thank you. So the other thing that we're really interested in democratizing is the opportunity for everybody to do some of the actions that are important in meeting the biodiversity and climate crises that we're in. So one of the key things that we find when we do the work that we do on threatened species or ecosystems anywhere, you know, the biggest thing that comes up again and again and again is habitat. Decline in habitat, both area of habitat and the quality of habitat. So all of us can play a role in protecting existing habitat and enhancing habitat, such as is happening in the Yea wetlands. That's a really good thing that anyone can do. We know that we're going to have more disasters and they're going to be more severe. So we can help improve resilience. Habitat's one way of doing that. There's things that we can do at ARI, but ordinary people can do things like that by protecting local populations, reducing pressures on those populations. There's a whole lot of things that they can do. Contributing to citizen science so we know where things are. One of the problems of climate change is the pace of change. Things are changing so fast that it's hard for animals to adapt in time. So again, it's really important for us to support their resilience and be innovative in how we respond to that, and recognise that we might need to plant different things when we do our tree planting. Those sorts of flexibilities in recognising the changing world are really important in the success of the actions that we take. The pace of change also means that the systems that we thought we knew are changing. So we're constantly needing new knowledge, new decision support tools, new data. And again, this is where citizen science and just observations and sharing those observations is really important. And because we want to be out there capturing as much data as we can and applying that to develop really good, great new knowledge for the changing world, one of the most important things that I would love everyone here to do is simply advocate for science, advocate for knowledge, not Facebook gossip, but science, the true stuff. Advocating for that is incredibly important. So the other thing we do at ARI is work with lots of different people, lots of people all over the place. If you want to know more at ARI, of course, we have a website and we have lots of communication products, if you like, that come out. We have seminars, we have an electronic newsletter, we have updates. And if you go to that website, or if you go to arivic.gov.au and just look up subscriptions, you can subscribe and you'll get them by email. The seminars are fabulous in particular, I really recommend. The most wonderful and amazing thing at ARI is our people. They are our biggest asset. They are amazing. They are dedicated, committed, smart, funny, great people to work with. This is a little bit out of date from last year, but it's about 110 people. They're all wonderful, and it's a joy to work with them and all the different things that they bring. This is how we're kind of structured and arranged. So I am the director and I report to the executive director of the Biodiversity division in DELWP. And then we have these different sections in ARI. Lindy Lumsden, who some of you might know as a bat person, see a couple of nods, she's amazing. She's our sort of overarching science leader. Jared does our aquatic work, Andy does our comms work, Jenny's wildlife ecology and fire and threatened species, Steve and Heather do the business and admin, and Tim manages community ecology, which also has things around fire and decision tools and data. So looking at that, it makes me think about leadership. So this is where it's time for us to go to Antarctica, because it's in the context of leadership that I went to Antarctica and that I'm still involved with this organisation that does connect with Antarctica. So if we think about leadership, my sense is that leadership right now in the world is a bit broken. I do see good examples of leadership, but I see a lot of examples of broken leadership. I see leadership which is not fit for purpose, it's out of date, it's not working anymore, it's not contemporary leadership, it's worn out and it is not working. We need to change the way in which we lead in the world. So there's this organisation called Homewood Bound, which recognises that to lift leadership in the world, we need more diverse voices at the leadership table. We need to connect with people all around the world. Homeward Bound is about growing the voices of women with a background in science, in matters that affect the planet. And climate change is obviously a key one there. Its aim is to work with 100 women every year for 10 years. So 1,000 women in a global network connected together on matters that affect the planet, women with a background in science. We're now up to 700. The program is a year-long program which is done online, and then a journey to Antarctica if we're not in COVID times. The one-year program looks at leadership, strategy, visibility, and science and collaboration. And we do a lot of things online and then a whole lot of things on the ship in Antarctica. I joined the first voyage for Homeward Bound 1 in 2016 as a participant. I went through the program, went to Antarctica as part of that initiative. And then there were a whole lot of things about that journey that I thought, I reckon I can help make this better. So I became involved with the program and evolving the program, and I became involved with Homeward Bound 3 in 2019 as part of the leadership faculty, and went to Antarctica again. Yes, lucky me. Then COVID hit, of course, so I'm still part of the leadership faculty for Homeward Bound 6, but everything's just happening on Zoom. So those women, we don't know yet if they'll get to go to Antarctica. If they do, it will be the end of next year, because Ushuaia, where we depart from, has no facilities if somebody's sick. I mean, it's complicated, but we're not going there yet. So I was just exhilarated at the opportunity to go to Antarctica, partly because I studied Antarctic algae when I was at university, but I'd never seen algae in Antarctica myself. So the joy of actually getting there and seeing algae and lichens in situ in Antarctica was an incredible joy for me. Like, nothing to do with what Homeward Bound's actually, wanting us to do, but that was my initial response was, oh, there they are after 30 years. So that was really wonderful for me. But as well as all the leadership training and all the leadership diagnostics and all that stuff, we recognize that if you just sit and watch penguins, there's so much you can observe and reflect on just by watching penguins. And the first thing is their incredible sense of purpose. Like, penguins have one thing in mind and they just get out there and they do it steadfastly, purposefully. From there to there, they just keep going. Nothing gets in the way. They just keep on going with a really strong sense of purpose and meaning. And you can be like sitting right next to them and they're just oblivious of your presence. They've got purpose. They're heading for that. And they do it with incredible persistence. So, like, why would they go all the way up there? There's rocks down near the shore that you could nest in, but they have some sense of purpose that there's something they want to get to at the top of that hill. So they just go up and up and up and on and on. And they just keep on. They do not give up in their clear purpose. They have persistence. Incredibly important in leadership. You don't give up. They're resilient and they work together. Penguins have to be resilient and work together. They are constantly battled by skuas, these birds that come and take their eggs or take them if they're being vulnerable. The weather is tricky. You must have seen those pictures where king penguins all huddled together to keep warm and look after each other's eggs, right? They work together. When penguins go into the water, they go en masse, safety in numbers, because there's seals there waiting for you. So they work together to support their resilience. Leaders should be curious. They should ask questions about the world with courage. They should not back away from things, but be curious about the world and go, what is that? What's going on there? What's happening there? Why? They should ask lots of questions, and penguins do that all the time. As leaders, it's incredibly important that we speak up. That thing around the standards we walk past or the standards we accept. We should call things out when they're not okay. In our communities, in our workplaces, in society. We should speak up for the things that are right in the world. And penguins speak up all the time because they're calling to their partner who's coming in from the sea with the fish, right? So they make their voice heard, and their voice is unique and authentic. So we should do that. Penguins and whales seize opportunities. So this gentoo penguin up the top I took a picture of it because it had the biggest, fattest belly I'd ever seen on a penguin. It had clearly, and it's all lovely and clean, so it's just come in from the sea. It's been out feasting on an amazing array of fish that it's found. It found those fish and it sees those opportunities and it's gorged itself and it can barely move because it's so stuffed with fish. And those whales, they've found a super swarm of krill and they are moving around feasting on those krill. And I didn't put the sound on, but they're making this sound, which actually has a technical name. It's called appreciative murmurings. And they kind of go, It's kind of like, oh, this is so good. So whales, you know, they seize the opportunity and they feast on those krill when they find them. So we should do that too. Always seize opportunities. One of the opportunities that I seized in Antarctica was to go swimming. Now, I did not anticipate going swimming in Antarctica at all. It wasn't on my list. But some of the other women on, this is on the first trip, some of those women were raising money for the fee to go, right? And they had, if you give me $200, I'll do a polar swim. They had that kind of thing, you know, and someone had to take a photo and then they'd get money towards their fundraising. And I was helping some of those women with, you know, towels and dry socks and all that stuff when they came out of the water. And they looked just so full of joy when they came out of the water. I thought, maybe I should try that. And I'd like to be able to tell my kids that I did that. So Sarah and I went for a swim. And of course, the other women that I'd helped do their swim, they had done it in a volcanic caldera where there's warm rocks underneath that warm the water, but not the day that Sarah and I chose. Like the water was literally freezing up, and around to the right, there's a glacier that is constantly calving and sending little tiny tsunamis of ice coming up on the shore. And we ran in, and I don't know if anyone knows about physiology and how your vagus nerve just stops. You just can't breathe. Literally couldn't breathe. And it was very numb, but we swam for a very brief period. And then we ran back out. And when we came out and we were putting our things on, I noticed that across my legs, there were all these like horizontal cuts. And we had blood dripping down our legs from hitting the ice as we ran in. But we couldn't feel it because it was so numb. And it's one of the most exhilarating things I've ever done. Like it was just joyful and it was fun and I felt incredibly alive. You know, you read these things about cold water swimming. This is like cold water swimming in extreme. And it was, yeah, I'm so glad I took that opportunity. It's a really good opportunity. I did it again when I went the second time. It wasn't quite as spectacular, but it was a lot of fun. We had music that time. That was fun. So seize opportunities. Learn from others. You know, we stand on the shoulders of giants, all that stuff, certainly in science. We spend a lot of time, there's no footpaths in Antarctica. There's no, you know, roads or power lines or any of that stuff. So you have to walk through snow that's often thigh deep, and it's quite difficult sometimes. And we would watch the penguins and they would waddle up, but then they never waddle down. They create these highways and they just slide down. And we thought, well, that's far more efficient. Like we should do that too. That's way more efficient and it's a lot more fun. So we did it the penguin way, learn from others, much better idea, really good to do. So these are all the kinds of leadership things that if you've ever thought about leadership, you know those things are true. You know that purpose is important, curiosity is important, speaking up, being persistent, having courage and curiosity, all those things are important. But sometimes leadership is really hard, and those basic things are really hard to hang on to and be persistent with. And this is us coming back across the Drake Passage from my second voyage. And this is a big wave. And, you know, it's not always smooth sailing. Leadership demands a response that lifts you into a different space, and you need to do things a bit differently. And also have that courage to step into that different space. So, you know, after that first Homeward Bound voyage, it was really apparent to me that Homeward Bound needed to change. and I wanted to step into a space to help it change and create a transformational safe space for the participants. At the same time, I'm really mindful that the world needs different leadership, and the world is changing really fast. And we have all these different kinds of trauma that we need to lead in, whether it's fire or floods or COVID or all the things, climate change. We need leadership that's really intentional and not just standard, oh yeah, as normal. So for the Homewood Bound 3 trip, we were very deliberate and intentional about the kind of leadership that we wanted to deliver ourselves and inspire in others. And this is the leadership faculty that I worked with on that voyage. And I'm incredibly grateful to these women because we did it. Like, we created this extraordinary cohort of constructive, positive women embracing the courage and opportunities of leadership. The one that is really striking in this picture, and I'm going to talk about a bit more, is Christiana Figueres here. She literally is the woman who changed the world. Now, I first sort of got to meet Christiana, if you like, on the first voyage with Homewood Bound, where she did a video lecture for us. And she talked about these ideas of relentless optimism and radical collaboration. And this was before 2020. And she had this website called Mission 2020, which was about bringing together diverse voices across the globe to make a change in the world. So I knew who she was. I knew that she'd been the executive secretary on the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, but I didn't know a lot about her until we found out that she was coming with us on Homewood Bound 3. And I realized everyone was going, what? Christiana Figueres? And when we arrived at the dock, like, everyone had to take a selfie with Christiana Figueres. Oh my God, there's a lot of fangirl stuff going on. And, you know, so it should be, because Christiana, yes, she was the executive secretary for the UN from 2010 to 2016. She is the woman who secured the Paris Agreement on international climate change in 2015. This was a massive achievement given what had happened just before then. She forged a new brand of collaborative diplomacy, which had never been seen before. And she went from the confrontation of Copenhagen to the collaboration of Paris. She changed the world. Now, I could show you 6 slides of all of her achievements. I'm not going to, because that's, just get the idea, right? She's amazing. But she's also human. Like, she's amazing. And we sat down and we played penguins with these little penguins, and we, you know, she's terrific. She is funny, she's smart, she's wise, she's vulnerable, she's fierce, and she's compelling. And she constantly models thinking about the future. She's always thinking about the future. She's inspiring, and she is a champion for stubborn optimism. So I want to talk a little bit about how she did that, how she changed the world, how she achieved this global conversation that was in a space of dysfunction and impossibility to one that achieved agreement and became an unstoppable, well, perhaps apart until the last COP, but it's still got unstoppable momentum behind it, right? It is definitely changing. How did she do that? Now, when she was on the ship with us, she talked a lot about this. And this is Deb O'Connell in this picture that I shared a cabin with. The woman behind is Amy, who does little drawings of penguins. Deb and I captured everything that Christiana said, and we wrote it on sticky notes and we mapped it on the wall of our cabin. And these notes basically formed one of the chapters of this book, which I might talk about it again in a sec. But we were helping Christiana get clear in her mind how she made that happen. She was using the voyage as a sorting process for herself, and we helped her by mapping it on the walls. So the next 4 slides are pretty tedious. If you're not interested in how does diplomacy work at an international level, tune out for a bit or check your phone. But if you want to know, this is how it's done. So Christiana, one of her first media interviews, someone said to her, "So do you think it's going to work?" And she said, not in my lifetime. And then she went home and she watched the news and she thought, oh, you idiot. Like, of course it won't happen if that's what you believe and if that's what you say to people. So she completely changed to a conversation of optimism and one of courage, hope, trust, and solidarity. And she keeps telling us that optimism is true moral courage. And she operates in this way that goes from me, we, world. She talks about creating a better me amongst a better we for a better world. And she applied all that in the things that she did in mapping this stuff. So she talked about all the things that she had to do above the waterline as part of her job, and all the things that she was doing below the waterline to manage herself and her response. There's a lot. And then she talked about the same kind of thing for her team. All the things she had to do as a job and the things she was doing under the waterline. And she created this, it was actually a secret, this Operation Groundswell, where she sent people out to connect with all these other allies, to bring them together and have common ground and have a surround sound effect of optimism that it could be done. And she formed agreement by these ideas around a healthy team, good connections, facilitating really well, treating everything fairly, and being really mindful of everyone else's circumstances. And she did it. She got a global agreement to transform the economy based on a new relationship between North and South, supported by everyone, fair, based on science and unanimous agreement. It's incredible. She also helped us prepare women who were on the voyage who were going to COP25. And she's done the same with Homeward Bound women who went to COP26. Those women continue to make a difference in the world. If you want to know more about Christiana's work, I highly recommend this website. It has podcasts and all sorts of amazing things. I recommend you read this book, which also has 10 things that you can do to save the world and choose the future that you want. That's my signed version. So I recommend that book. The other thing I wanted to quickly touch on is that it's not just Christiana that made us come off Homeward Bound thinking we can change the world too. It's Antarctica itself. Like, it is truly awesome in the true sense of the word. And we had a physical disconnect from our normal worlds because there's no internet, right? So it is awesome. And it meant that we felt open to change and a different future. It's a hugely reflective space. And of course, it's melting. So everywhere we went, we saw glaciers collapsing, glaciers melting. We saw islands that should be covered in snow that weren't. We saw where glaciers had retreated. Now that Nunatak, that pyramid mountain in the background, that's only been evident. It's become evident just over the last decade. It used to be under a glacier. And that bay used to be under a glacier 4 years ago. So you can see the retreat. You can see the changes in penguin populations. You can see these massive tabular icebergs in the Weddell Sea that came off the Larsen ice shelf. They're a hazard to shipping. This is a fragmented glacier floating around. Of course, it's also really beautiful. So it's very, you just come away wanting to change things and do things for Antarctica and for the whole world. But let's come back now. Let's come back away from Antarctica back to Yay and to our world here. All of us came back off Homeward Bound, big network, ready to change the world, supporting each other, and we still do. Every day there's WhatsApp messages. And we see the world differently now. We see it through a different lens, from a different shape. We see it in a holistic way, and it's changed how we do things and how we see things. Now, you all know that there's dozens of things that you can do to address climate change and the biodiversity crisis. This is a program that I'm involved with the Royal Society of Victoria and Museum of Victoria. These are the things that we're going to be advocating that people do. They're around energy and food and waste and all those sorts of things. These are all climate actions. But I want to focus on just three. I want 3 takeaway messages for you tonight. The first one is advocate, Christiana style, with optimism, a sense of vision for the future, integrity in action, science-based, build allies, have respect for all voices and listen, be fair, and have courage, hope, trust, and work with solidarity. That's the Christiana way, and it works. And then be the change that you want to see in the world. You know, we know that phrase, and we can do that by intentionally being mindful of the decisions that we make, the things that we say, and the actions that we do. And then for the fish and the birds and the possums, and for all of us, plant trees. Just plant heaps of trees, because, you know, it's visible, it demonstrates good action, it does all the good things that trees do, it's good for you, and it does things about carbon. Definitely worth doing. So 3 simple things that you can do from now on. And I'm just going to leave you with 2 questions, because, and Christiana says this all the time, but lots of other people have said it in the past. And it's because if not us, who? And if not now, when? Now is the time. We are the people to act, and we need to do it now. So thank you so much. I've put my contacts down the bottom if you want to keep this conversation going, and thank you so much for your time tonight.
Well, Fern, a wonderful message, and I think we'll all remember that for a long time. Are you willing to answer some questions? The reason I'm using the microphone is just to make sure, because we have people on Zoom, and if you would like to ask a question, it would be helpful if you identify yourself and actually use the microphone. So, anybody like to ask the first question?
No, the question is, who would like to ask the first question?
Who would like to ask the first question?
Not if, who?
If it comes down to me, I'm just fascinated by your experience in Antarctica, and you mentioned the rate of change there. Do you think we have the opportunity to reverse some of that, or is it just a reality that we're going to have a smaller Antarctica in terms of frozen continent in the future compared to what we have now?
I wish I could be more optimistic. I'm optimistic that we can slow the change and that we can shift that trajectory. The current trajectory is really, really troubling. The current trajectory has a massive de-icing, change in the ice shelf, change in what's happening in Antarctica, and we're seeing it right now. We have massive elevated temperatures in both the Arctic and the Antarctic. We've got, it's raining in Antarctica. You know, Antarctica used to always be known as the driest continent on Earth because it never rained there. We had rain, and it's been raining there a lot lately, and that makes it really difficult for the penguins because rain runs through their nests and drowns eggs. So the changes are real and they are dramatic, and the slope of the change is terrible. I don't think we'll be able to go backwards, but we can change that slope of change down to holding things where they are and stopping them getting worse. But it's urgent. You know, we've really only got until 2030. So I'm optimistic we can avoid catastrophe, but we need to act now.
And did you notice any perceivable difference between when you were there first and then when you went back? What was the distance between, or the time between?
3 years. So it's a little bit hard to say because the season was slightly different. And, you know, every day in Antarctica is different. Every hour is different. So it's a little bit hard to say, but we stopped at research stations and spoke with the researchers at those stations. So, you know, we can check our observations with their data. So that picture that I showed you of that brown volcanic plug, That's Carlini Research Station. It's an Argentinian research station. The first year that I went there, it wasn't completely covered in snow or ice, but it was mostly covered in snow. And then I went back in 2009 and it was completely brown. And there were just fragments of glacier all along the shore. And we spoke with the researchers there and they described that, you know, they hadn't had snow all season. So it wasn't just that day that, you know, our observation was perhaps not representative, but for the whole season they hadn't had snow there. And I had seen the shift in the glacier in that bay because that's also at Carlini. And I had seen that glacier recede probably, I'd say about 300 meters. And they say it's going back about 100 meters a year. So that's really fast. The other thing that we witnessed was the changes in penguin populations. So Gen 2s are kind of generalists, like they can live in lots of different places really within the narrow boundaries that penguins have. You know, they're relatively generalists, but adelies are not. Adelies have really specific needs in terms of grazing underneath ice flows to get the algae and krill, and they have really specific needs in terms of their nesting as well. That kind of habitat is disappearing. And the Adelie, so we went to the Antarctic Peninsula, you know, so you imagine the further you go along back into the peninsula, you're heading south, right? So the Adelies are going further and further south along the peninsula, and the Gen 2s are occupying more territory because they're less fussy, if you like. So we could see that. I mean, there's still places where we saw 200,000 Adelies. Great privilege to see that kind of abundance of wildlife. But there were other places where we saw the change that had happened. And again, talking with scientists at Palmer Station, which is a United States research station, they've been tracking the penguin populations for decades and the change is dramatic there. So yes, we made some observations, which we then checked with the scientists and they said, yeah, it's even worse. And they're in climate grief. They're really struggling.
Oh, sorry, yes, I do have a comment. I
Just
think.
got a comment from Pauline Roberts, who works here. Thanks, Fern, most appreciated. Totally agree. Antarctica is awesome in the truest sense of the word.
Very good.
Has Pauline been? Sounds like she has. Lucky Pauline. Yeah.
Don,
Fern, I'm interested very much in the leadership styles and leadership in general, and we actually support a trust in South Africa that rescues orphan elephants. And if you watch the videos and listen to the stories, the leadership amongst the elephant tribe is just amazing, absolutely amazing. So I was interested in your comment about penguins asking questions, but you didn't quite expand on that, and I'd like to hear a bit more about that.
Do you mean the penguins asking questions or us asking questions?
No, you made the comment that penguins ask questions,
Hmm.
and that sort of triggered something in my mind. What did you really mean about that?
Well, I think they're curious. You know, they check things. They don't make assumptions. They don't pass things by and not wonder what's going on there. So, you know, in the video there that I had of the Adelie looking at me, you know, I was just sitting on the shore and the Adelie came right up next to me and was going, "What are you?" You know, it didn't just wander past. It was going, "There's something weird here. What is this thing? And what is it doing here?" Like, it didn't just ignore it, and it noticed change in its environment and checked it out. And they do the same before they go into a hazardous environment. So they don't just, you know, leap into the sea en masse altogether. They spend ages watching, checking, looking, asking questions. Is it safe? Is it safe? Is there a seal? Is there something else? Is there this? Should we do it? Should we go now? Should we go now? What about now? So they're constantly checking what they know about the world.
Thank you. That answers it perfectly.
Thank you. Good question. Thank you.
Other questions at all? Nothing coming through there? No?
Surely there's no questions. That was an absolutely incredible presentation. There's got to be more questions.
Thank you.
We can do it informally if people don't have any formal questions.
Well, I'd like to say,
No, Rosemary.
how did it change you
Oh. That's a really good question.
I don't reckon you've ever changed. I reckon you're born like this.
No. There's a simple answer and a complicated answer that would probably take a day. After Homeward Bound, somebody asked me the same question in a talk that I did about Homeward Bound 1. And my answer then was, it made me kinder. It made me more kind about other people, their circumstances, their situation. I was more generous about what's going on for other people and what do they really mean and what are they really saying. Don't interpret the worst, interpret the best, and be kind. Practice random acts of kindness whenever you can. Be the change that you want in the world. Be kind. Kindness makes a big difference. So that was Homeward Bound 1, I think, perhaps because it was a bit rough. Homeward Bound 3, I think I came back more courageous, more ready to step into things that need to be done, more confident that maybe I could, because if not me, you know, there's a responsibility being in the world now, and you can't just sponge off the world. You have to, you know, I also have a really deep respect for the notion of country around reciprocity, and I believe deeply in reciprocity. So Homeward Bound 3 taught me to live reciprocity, not just say it. So I don't know. Ask Bev.
Question. No, I have to say, often when we go to leadership talks, it's thinking about, you know, how do I be a leader, and it's top-down leading, or it's about how to motivate a group or whatever. Your talk's been very different. Can you give some examples about any of the women on the excursions, 19 excursions, and how they've used interpreted this experience in their workplace, and so how it's shown? Because we could go away thinking, oh, have all those women got top jobs somewhere and are they heads of corporations? I don't think that's what your leadership experience was about. Can you sort of flesh that out a little for us?
Yes. So the Homeward Bound style of leadership is about values-based leadership that is ethical, that is kind, that enables people to bring their best selves to whatever the endeavour is. And it is collaborative, and it is legacy-minded, and it's full of integrity. So that's very different from a leadership model, which is about command and control. It's the opposite of that. It's about enabling collective impact and collaboration to achieve a shared vision through values-based approaches. So, and you're totally right that, yes, there are some women who have very senior positions in the world, and it's great that they're bringing that style to those circumstances. There are also women who are bringing it to small community groups or a school or their family. You know, that style of leadership is really important in every tier of your life. And when we do the strategy mapping, we talk about how will we apply this for ourselves, for our family, for our work team, if we work, and for the context in which we're trying to work. So there's also an element about being kind and courageous for yourself, and then also for your family. And, you know, it has these tiers to it. So it's scalable and can be applied in any kind of thing. I mean, it is incredible what some of the women are doing and have chosen to do, that have also come away with a sense of courage and I need to do something now. So one of the women on Homeward Bound 3, Lorna Slater, was an engineer in Scotland, and she quite liked her job. She was a bit frustrated about some things that were happening with renewable energy. Lorna Slater is now a Green senator in Scotland, and she's changing the country. Like, it's incredible what she's doing. So people have just gone away with I'm going to do something. And we've got this sense of other people having our back. You know, we use this hashtag stronger together because, you know, like the other day I had something at work that I said, oh, I really don't know what's happening here. Is it this or it's this? So I just type a message in the WhatsApp, you know, and if it's 5 p.m. here, it'll be 9 a.m. somewhere and someone will be awake. Or if I type it at 2 a.m., someone will be awake. All around the world, you get these messages, 24 hours, people responding with advice or links or things you should read or things you should try, or what about this, or ask this person. And, you know, and I've done that with asking for people to sit on a panel or something as well. So the stronger together thing is really important. I'm rabbiting on a bit.
Don, I think you have another question.
Fern,
No, very good.
I have a question about, I guess, when you look at the demographic here in the room tonight, it's not hard to understand who we are. This centre, we have quite a mission to educate about water, use of water, climate change, sustainability. We're about to embark on hopefully a new program in our education in interpretive centre that you walked in earlier tonight. And my feeling is always that we should be getting to the next generation with what we do in there. I see a real disconnect at the moment between the current generation that we're talking to here and the next 2 generations. And I wonder how the hell we get to them, because and I was having a conversation with someone here earlier. At the moment, the new generation seem to be, it's all about me, it's all about having stuff that I want, not what I like, I want it now. I think they don't quite get the message of what this is all about tonight. And we can't get them here in a meeting like this. How the hell are we going to do that? Because to me, that's the key to anything that you're trying to do and others in the field. That's the key, to get to the next generations to make the difference.
Yeah, well, that's a complex question and a complex answer. And I think you're right that there are some people who don't care and are focused on what they want. There are also amazing young leaders doing incredible things here and internationally, and they deserve our support and encouragement in whatever they're doing. Because I come from a scientific research institute, and we want to be nurturing the next generation of scientists as well. So my main communications guy is like 28. He's the classic ponytail guy, and he's really good at tech. and I say, what do you reckon? You know, what do we need to do, Andy? Like you use the budget, just do it. Like I enable him. And, you know, it requires music and fun and diverse opportunities and things that are in short, sharp options, like small, bite-sized opportunities to engage with, not a 4-hour sit and listen to lectures. That's never going to fly. Citizen science, if you can make it fun, is just powering along, because now that we all have a mobile phone, the data is fantastic. So citizen science is just going berserk, and done well, that can nurture people in a really meaningful way. So I think there's a lot of answers to that. But enabling young people to be the peers in encouraging other young people is key. Like, they're not going to listen to me, like their mother.